I should have trusted my instincts the moment I walked into the Grandview Hotel. But when you're a traveling salesman on a tight budget and it's past midnight in the middle of nowhere, you don't have the luxury of being picky. The lobby smelled of mildew and something else, something sweet and rotten that I couldn't quite place. Behind the desk sat an elderly man with paper-thin skin stretched across his skull like wet tissue. His eyes were so pale they were almost colorless. "Just you?" he asked, his voice like gravel scraping against concrete. "Just me," I confirmed, sliding my credit card across the cracked marble counter. He looked at the card, then at me, then back at the card. "Room 237 is available." "Great, I'll take it." "It's the only one available." He said this slowly, deliberately, as if testing whether I'd understand some hidden meaning. I didn't. The elevator groaned as it carried me to the second floor. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lit by flickering fluorescent lights that hummed in irregular rhythm. The carpet was worn down to nothing in places, revealing the concrete beneath. As I walked, I counted the rooms: 201, 203, 205. All odd numbers on one side, even on the other. Except there was no room 236 or 238, just 237 standing alone at the end of the hall like it had always been there and always would be. The key, an actual metal key, not a card, felt ice cold in my palm. I slid it into the lock, and the door opened before I could turn it. The room was surprisingly nice. Clean sheets, a functioning TV, a bathroom that didn't look like it harbored new strains of bacteria. I almost laughed at my earlier paranoia. Small-town hotels were just creepy by nature, nothing sinister about it. I set down my suitcase, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the bed. The mattress was firmer than I expected, almost uncomfortably so, but I was too exhausted to care. I reached for the remote and turned on the TV. Static. I flipped through the channels. More static. Every single one. That's when I noticed the silence. Not just quiet, silence. The kind of absolute absence of sound that makes your ears ring. No traffic outside, no pipes groaning, no neighbors moving around. Nothing. I stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the heavy curtain. There was nothing outside. Not darkness, not fog, nothing. A void so complete that my brain struggled to process what I was seeing, or not seeing. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't right. I'd driven up to the hotel. There had been a parking lot, a road, trees. Now there was just nothing. Get out. The thought screamed through my mind. Get out now. I grabbed my suitcase and flung open the door. The hallway had changed. It was darker now, the lights having given up their flickering to surrender to shadow. And it was longer, much longer. I could barely see the elevator at the far end, a pinprick of dim light in the distance. I ran. My footsteps echoed wrong, like they were coming from behind me instead of beneath me. The numbers on the doors began to blur as I passed. 237, 237, 237. Every door was 237. The elevator. I just needed to reach the elevator. My lungs burned as I sprinted down that impossible hallway. The elevator grew closer, then farther, then closer again, reality bending around me like I was running through a funhouse mirror. Finally, miraculously, I reached it. I slammed my palm against the down button over and over. The doors opened immediately. The elderly man from the front desk stood inside, that same unsettling smile on his face. "Leaving so soon?" he asked. "But you've only just checked in." "Let me out," I gasped. "Please, let me out." He tilted his head, studying me. "Room 237 doesn't let guests leave until they've stayed the full night. House rules." "That's insane. I'm leaving. Get out of my way." I tried to push past him into the elevator, but my hands went through him like smoke. He felt like static, like the dead air between radio stations. He leaned in close and I could see that his eyes weren't pale. They were empty, just holes in his face leading to somewhere else. "You should have read the reviews," he whispered. The elevator doors closed. I spun around. The hallway behind me was gone. I was standing in a small windowless room with gray walls and a single door marked 237. My room. I was back in my room. But it had changed. The bed was gone. The bathroom was gone. There was nothing except walls that seemed closer than before. I ran to the door and tried the handle. Locked. I pounded on it, screaming for help, but the door absorbed the sound like a sponge. The walls were definitely closer now. I could see them moving, inch by inch, creeping inward. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The time read 11:47 p.m. I watched as the seconds ticked by, but the minute never changed. 11:47, 11:47, 11:47. The walls were close enough to touch on both sides now. That's when I heard it. Breathing that wasn't mine. It came from everywhere at once, from the walls themselves, slow and raspy and hungry. And then I understood. Room 237 wasn't a room at all. It was something alive. Something that fed on travelers who stayed too long in forgotten places. The walls pressed against my shoulders. I couldn't move my arms anymore. In my paralysis, I looked up and saw words carved into the ceiling. Hundreds of names scratched into the plaster by fingernails worn to nubs. The walls were touching my chest now, squeezing the air from my lungs. With the last of my strength, I pulled out my car key and scraped my name into the ceiling, right below someone who'd written, "Help us," in letters that trembled with desperation. The pressure increased. I couldn't breathe. The darkness crowded my vision. And then somehow I woke up. I was in my car, parked on the side of a highway, the sun glaring through my windshield. My head throbbed. My chest ached like I'd been crushed. I looked around wildly, trying to orient myself. There was no hotel, just empty fields on either side of the road. A dream. It had been a nightmare brought on by exhaustion. I laughed shakily, relief flooding through me. Then I noticed the key lying in my passenger seat. A metal key attached to a plastic tag that read, "Room 237, Grandview Hotel." And my fingernails were torn and bloody, dirt packed underneath them like I'd been digging. Or scratching. I started the car with trembling hands and drove away as fast as I could. But sometimes, late at night when I'm staying in hotels for work, I'll wake up to find the walls just a little closer than they should be. And I'll hear that breathing, soft and patient. Room 237 doesn't forget its guests, and I don't think I ever really left. The Rosewood Inn was supposed to be my fresh start. After my divorce finalized and my mother's medical bills bankrupted me, I needed any job I could get. Housekeeping at a boutique hotel in the mountains wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work with free room and board. Mrs. Henley, the manager, showed me to my quarters on the 3rd floor, a small room with a single bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the forest. "You'll be responsible for the West Wing," she explained. "Rooms 301 through 320. We're not usually fully booked, so it's manageable." "What about the East Wing?" I asked, noticing the long hallway that stretched in the opposite direction. Her expression darkened. "The East Wing is closed for renovations. You're not to go down there under any circumstances. Understood?" I nodded, though something in her tone made my skin prickle. The first week passed uneventfully. I cleaned rooms, changed linens, and tried not to think about my old life. The guests were mostly older couples and families on vacation. They left decent tips and treated me kindly enough. But I kept hearing things from the East Wing. At first, it was just footsteps, soft, shuffling steps that would start around 2 a.m. and continue until dawn. Then came the sound of a vacuum cleaner, its electric whine cutting through the silence of the sleeping hotel. I mentioned it to Carla, the other housekeeper. She'd worked at the Rosewood for 15 years. "Don't pay it no mind," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Old buildings make all kinds of noise. It sounds like someone's cleaning over there." Carla's hands stilled on the towels she was folding. "You keep to the West Wing, girl. Some things are best left alone." But curiosity is a poison that spreads slowly. Each night the sounds grew louder, more insistent. Footsteps, vacuum, and sometimes singing. A woman's voice humming an old lullaby that my grandmother used to sing to me. On my 10th night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I waited until my shift ended at midnight, then crept down the hallway toward the East Wing. The door marked Authorized personnel only was unlocked. The east wing was dark, lit only by moonlight filtering through uncovered windows. The air was cold, much colder than the rest of the hotel, and smelled of lemon cleaner and something underneath it, something chemical and wrong. The hallway looked identical to the west wing, except the carpet was spotless and the walls looked freshly painted. Whatever renovations Mrs. Henley had mentioned were clearly finished. Room 313's door stood ajar. The humming was coming from inside. My rational mind screamed at me to turn back, but my feet carried me forward. I pushed the door open slowly, wincing as it creaked. A woman stood with her back to me, making the bed with crisp, efficient movements. She wore a chambermaid's uniform, but not the modern polo shirts we wore. This was old-fashioned, something from the 1950s, complete with a white apron and a small cap pinned to her dark hair. "Hello?" My voice came out as a whisper. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge me at all. She just continued making the bed, tucking the corners with practiced precision, humming that lullaby. I stepped closer. "Excuse me, I'm not supposed to be here, but She finally turned around. I couldn't scream. The air froze in my lungs. She had no face. Where her features should have been, there was just smooth skin, like an unfinished mannequin. But somehow I knew she was looking at me. She tilted her head, and when she spoke, her voice came from somewhere inside her throat, muffled and wet. "You're late for your shift." I stumbled backward, my hip crashing into the dresser. "We have 20 rooms to clean," she continued, picking up a feather duster. "We mustn't keep the guests waiting." I don't work this wing," I stammered. She moved toward me, her steps unnaturally smooth, like she was gliding across the floor. "All chambermaids work where they're needed. You know this. I'm leaving." I turned and ran for the door, but the hallway had changed. The doors now went on forever, stretching into darkness in both directions. 313, 313, 313. Every door was room 313. Behind me, I heard her footsteps, still smooth, still gliding, but faster now. "You can't leave," she said, closer now. "You haven't finished your work." I picked a door at random and burst through it. I was in another version of room 313. Same layout, same furniture. But this one had a body on the bed. A woman in a chambermaid's uniform, the modern kind, lay sprawled across the covers, her eyes wide and staring at nothing. Her mouth was open in a silent scream. I recognized her. I'd seen her picture in the break room. Melissa, a housekeeper who'd quit suddenly 6 months ago. At least that's what Mrs. Henley had told everyone. "She didn't finish her shift," the faceless woman said from the doorway behind me. "It's very important to finish your shift." I looked around desperately for another exit. The bathroom. Maybe I could lock myself in the bathroom. I ran past her, and this time she grabbed my arm. Her hand was ice cold, her grip impossibly strong. I screamed and thrashed, but she held firm. "We have work to do," she insisted, pulling me toward the bathroom. With my free hand, I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and smashed it against her head. She didn't flinch, didn't bleed, but her grip loosened just enough for me to wrench free. I crashed through the window, glass exploding around me, and landed hard on carpet. I was in the West Wing hallway, outside my own room. The emergency exit sign glowed red at the end of the corridor. Normal. Everything was normal. I scrambled to my feet, gasping, checking my arms for glass cuts. Nothing. Not even a scratch. Mrs. Henley appeared from the stairwell, her face angry. "What are you doing out here at this hour?" I heard screaming. "The East Wing," I panted. "There's a woman there, and a body, and—" "You went to the East Wing?" Her expression shifted from anger to something like fear. "After I explicitly told you, there's a dead girl in there. We need to call the police." Mrs. Henley grabbed my shoulders, her fingers digging in painfully. "You listened to me very carefully. You didn't see anything. The East Wing is closed. There's nothing there. Do you understand?" "But, do you understand?" Her eyes were wild, desperate. "If you value your life, you'll forget about this. You'll finish your shift tomorrow, collect your paycheck, and you'll leave the Rosewood Inn." I spent that night huddled in my bed, door locked, chair wedged under the handle. Every creak and groan of the old building sent terror shooting through me. At dawn, I packed my belongings and went straight to Mrs. Henley's office. "I'm leaving," I said. "Today. Now." She looked almost relieved. Probably for the best. She wrote me a check, not just for my work, but a substantial severance. Hush money, I realized. As I carried my suitcase to my car, Carla met me in the parking lot. "You saw her, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "The chambermaid." I nodded. Her name was Dorothy. She worked here in the 50s. Story goes she was having an affair with the hotel owner. When his wife found out, she locked Dorothy in room 313 and set it on fire. Management covered it up, said it was an electrical fault. And now she's, what, a ghost? Killing people? Carla shrugged. "All I know is that every few years someone goes to the East Wing, and we never see them again. Not alive, anyway." I drove away from the Rosewood Inn and never looked back. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. I've worked at 3 different hotels since then, all across the country. And at each one, late at night, I hear it. Footsteps in empty hallways, the whine of a vacuum cleaner, and that goddamn lullaby. Last week I found a note slipped under my door at my current hotel. Written in old-fashioned cursive, it said, "You never clocked out. We're waiting for you to finish your shift." I don't think Dorothy cares which hotel I work at. She just wants her help. And one night, when I'm too tired to resist, I know I'll follow those sounds down a hallway that shouldn't exist, into a room that's always waiting. We all finish our shifts eventually. I should preface this by saying I'm not the superstitious type. I'm a tech consultant. I deal in logic and data, and I've stayed in hundreds of hotels across the world without incident. But what happened at the Hotel Belmont changed me in ways I'm still trying to understand. It started with a last-minute booking in New Orleans. My flight got delayed, I missed my connection, and by the time I reached the city, it was past 10 p.m. My reserved hotel was overbooked, typical, so I found myself standing in the French Quarter with my luggage, exhausted and frustrated. The Hotel Belmont looked respectable enough. It was an older building, probably early 1900s, wedged between a souvenir shop and a jazz club. The lobby had that faded grandeur you see in places that were once magnificent, but have since fallen into genteel decay. The concierge desk was staffed by a man who looked ageless. He could have been 40 or 70. He had the kind of face you forget the moment you look away. "Welcome to the Hotel Belmont," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Checking in? If you have availability, I know it's late. For you, we always have a room." He slid a registration card across the desk. "Here for business or pleasure?" "Business, just one night." "Pity. New Orleans has so much to offer. Have you visited before?" I shook my head as I filled out the card. "Then you must let me make a recommendation." He pulled out a leather-bound journal and flipped through pages covered in handwritten notes. "There's a place just 3 blocks from here. The Crimson Door. It's not in any guidebooks. Very exclusive, very authentic. The real New Orleans, if you understand my meaning." "I appreciate it, but I'm pretty exhausted. I insist." He tore out a page from his journal and slid it across to me. On it was an address and a simple map. "Tell them Matthias sent you. They'll take good care of you." There was something in his tone that felt less like a suggestion and more like an instruction. But I was too tired to argue. I took the paper and thanked him. My room was on the 4th floor, room 418. It was clean but sparse, with furniture that looked original to the building. The kind of place where you could imagine 100 years of travelers sleeping in the same bed, leaving invisible imprints of their dreams and nightmares. I meant to go straight to sleep, but jet lag had scrambled my internal clock. I was wired, restless. I pulled out the concierge's recommendation and looked at it again. The Crimson Door. Why not? I'd grab one drink, soak in some local atmosphere, then crash. I'd probably sleep better with some alcohol in my system anyway. The address led me down progressively narrower streets, away from the tourist bustle of Bourbon Street and into residential areas that felt older, stranger. The buildings leaned toward each other like conspirators sharing secrets. The streetlights were few and far between, and the darkness between them felt solid. I found the place down a dead-end alley. There was no sign, just a red door in an otherwise featureless brick wall. I almost turned back. But I'd come this far, and some stubborn part of me didn't want to admit I was unnerved. I knocked. The door opened immediately, as if someone had been waiting on the other side. A woman stood there, beautiful in a way that made your eyes hurt if you looked too long. She wore a red dress that seemed to move independently of her body, rippling like water. "Matthias sent you," she said, not a question. "Yes," he said. "Come in." She stepped aside. The interior defied the exterior. The alley had been narrow and grimy. Inside was a vast space that seemed to stretch impossibly far, with cathedral ceilings and walls draped in red velvet. People filled the room, dozens of them, all beautiful, all wearing variations of red. Music played, though I couldn't identify the instruments. It sounded like jazz, but wrong, the notes bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. "First time?" the woman asked, leading me to the bar. "Yes. What exactly is this place?" "Sanctuary. Haven. Home." She smiled, revealing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "A place where certain appetites can be satisfied without judgment." The bartender, a man with eyes that reflected light like a cat's, poured me a drink without asking what I wanted. The liquid was dark red, almost black. I started. "It's on the house," the woman said. "For friends of Matthias." I took a sip to be polite. It tasted like cherries and copper and something indefinable that made my tongue tingle. The room began to move around me, or maybe I was moving, and the room was still. People danced, their movements fluid and inhuman. I saw a man bend backward at an impossible angle. A woman's laugh revealed a mouth that opened wider than physics should allow. "You're seeing us now," the woman whispered in my ear. "The drink opens eyes that society teaches us to keep closed." I tried to set down the glass, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. My body felt distant, like I was operating it via remote control with a bad connection. "What did you give me?" My words slurred. "Just truth. Just sight." "You're so used to seeing the mask that you forget what's underneath." She traced a finger down my cheek, and where she touched, my skin burned cold. "We've been waiting for you." "Waiting?" "Matthias sends us the special ones, the ones who are ready to stay." The room spun. The people in red were closer now, forming a circle around me. Their faces shifted, human one moment, something else the next. Too many teeth, too many eyes, features that rearranged themselves in ways that made my brain hurt. "I need to leave," I managed. "But you just arrived," someone said from behind me. "And we're so hungry." Hands grabbed me. Too many hands, coming from everywhere at once. Cold fingers dug into my arms, my shoulders, my throat. They lifted me off my feet as I struggled and screamed. "Don't fight," the woman crooned. "It's easier if you don't fight. Matthias promised us you'd be willing." They carried me toward a door at the back of the room, a black door that seemed to absorb light. With a surge of adrenaline, I wrenched one arm free and threw a wild punch. My fist connected with someone's face, and they howled. Not in pain, but in rage, a sound no human throat could make. I fell, crashed into a table, scrambled to my feet. The red door I'd entered through was impossibly far away, but I ran anyway. Behind me, they screeched and howled. I could hear them giving chase, their footsteps thundering like a stampede. I hit the door at full speed, bursting out into the alley. I ran without looking back, my lungs burning, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. I ran until I found myself back in the tourist area, surrounded by drunk college kids and bachelorette parties. Normal, blessed normalcy. I ducked into a crowded bar and hid in the bathroom for an hour, shaking and trying to convince myself I'd hallucinated the whole thing. A bad drink, a roofie maybe, something to explain what I'd seen. When I finally crept back to the Hotel Belmont, the lobby was empty. The concierge desk was unmanned. I grabbed my key and went straight to my room, where I pushed the dresser against the door and sat awake until dawn. I left as soon as the sun rose, not even bothering to check out properly. But here's the thing that haunts me. When I got home and unpacked, I found the page from the concierge's journal still in my pocket. I'd meant to throw it away, to burn it, to rid myself of any evidence. The map was still there, but the address had changed. Now it showed the street where I live, and underneath, in handwriting I hadn't noticed before, were the words, "They always come home eventually. We'll be waiting." I've moved twice since then, changed jobs, changed cities, changed my entire life. But last week I checked into a hotel for a conference. Different city, different hotel, different name. But when I walked into the lobby, there he was, Matthias, standing behind the concierge desk, that same ageless face wearing that same empty smile. "Welcome back," he said, as if no time had passed. "We've been expecting you. Can I make a recommendation for your evening?" I turned and walked out, slept in my car, flew home the next morning. But he's always there now. Every hotel, every city. Sometimes he's the concierge. Sometimes he's the bellhop or the bartender, or just another guest in the elevator. "You can't run forever," he told me last time, his voice cheerful. "The Crimson Door has your reservation, it never expires." I don't stay in hotels anymore, I can't. But sometimes, late at night in my apartment, I hear knocking. And when I look through the peephole, there's a red door where my hallway should be. One night, I'm going to be tired enough or drunk enough or just broken enough that I'll open it, and Matthias will be there, smiling, ready to take me home.